Taoiseach, Budget 2022 must be different. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity as we work our way out of this pandemic to restructure our economy. We, the Regional Independent TDs, are firmly of the view that this budget cannot just be about closing the gaps which have emerged during the pandemic, but it must also implement a strategy and the support structures that will ensure that every person in Ireland can grow and be supported in our recovery. First and foremost, we must ensure that we have a tax and welfare system where work always pays. Returning to work must be the most financially beneficial option for both individuals and families. This is the most effective way to break the cycle of poverty in families. Every child should have a healthy environment, a home and an education. And while there are many different ways to measure poverty, for me the most basic measure is hunger. No child should go to bed hungry. A child will never reach his or her full potential if that child sits at a school desk hungry. Yet, according to the study by the state agency Safe Food, 1 in 10 of our population lives in food poverty. The best way to boost incomes of poor families is by removing cliff-edge barriers to work embedded in our tax and welfare codes. For example, removing the anomaly where workers who earn over €352 a week face a very high marginal PRSI rate of 23.6% on that additional income up to €424. Or introducing a sliding scale of welfare payments so people don't find themselves better off out of work than in work. Taoiseach, we've all been contacted by employers who are finding it difficult to fill positions, or where employees are refusing overtime, or where they will only work 3 days a week. The fact is that both individuals and families are deterred from returning to work or accepting additional hours for fear that they will be penalised by the welfare system and the related supports. For example, the income limits for social housing have not increased in a decade, while property prices have doubled over the same period, forcing people to turn down work or face the prospect of homelessness. This has to be turned on its head, and our tax and welfare system must actively support people to return into the workforce in any capacity. Work must always be a better option than welfare, and the very first place we should start is with a radical overhaul of the working family payment, both in terms of the exclusions and the rates of support, to always make it financially better for families to access employment regardless of their make-up.
Thank you, Deputy Naughten. Taoiseach.
First of all, I thank the Deputy for the question, and just to say that I would accept that work is always the best option, and there's an onus to facilitate and incentivise opportunities for work within the economy. And I think the very successful reopening of the economy and sectors of society over the last 6 months is having a very significant impact on the numbers of people at work. Those, for example, in receipt of PUP now is down to 114,000 this week. That's down from a peak of 602,000 last year. So that's very good progress. Employment opportunities are being created, and we need to do more. And I take your point in respect of the cliff edge nature, and you referenced the PRSI from 18,000 per annum to 22,000 per annum. And these were measures that originally were introduced to avoid even a sharper cliff edge that would have been there prior to those measures being introduced. Now, we have established a commission on taxation and welfare, which is obviously to deal with the broader tax system and welfare system and the interplay between the two. And I think issues like that will fall under the remit of the Commission on Taxation, and it's been asked to review how best the taxation and welfare system can support economic activity and income redistribution, while obviously promoting employment and prosperity. And I think that really, I think, is where many of these issues will be hopefully dealt with, and recommendations can come from that. In the interim, of course, in the context of the budget, the Minister for Finance and the Minister for Public Expenditure and the Minister for Social Protection will periodically review the existing measures and look at anomalies or traps that are there that perhaps could discourage or act as a disincentive for people taking up employment or moving to full-time employment, for example. I take your point in respect of the income limits for social housing. Those thresholds are low, and I have asked the Minister for Housing to look at those, and they are under review. We have large numbers on the social housing list, but I do think that idea of people not being able to progress and work or get an extra increase in their salary, which would marginally then rule them out of eligibility for a social house, needs to be relaxed, in my view, and we need to take a more holistic approach to that issue. That would be my view. But obviously there are complications around that in terms of the implementation of it, and the Housing Department and the Minister for Housing is looking at that, but there is an issue there. And you've raised the issue of the liabilities around social insurance contributions, and you know why that was brought in 2016. And as I say, both ministers will keep those thresholds under review in the context of the forthcoming budget. I mean, the budget last year this year for social protection is 25 billion. Now, obviously, there's exceptional items in there because of COVID-19, but it's been an unprecedented year in respect of the social protection budget.
Denis Naughten.
Taoiseach, it's not all about reform. There are many supports to help people transition from welfare, but they are of little use if we cannot get that message out. We need a single government interface that shows how starting work or increasing hours can increase income. Building on the Department of Social Protection's benefit of work estimator, we need individualised income calculator that is much clearer on eligibility for a range of entitlements, which often causes confusion. And we must make sure that a work always pays strategy is not focused on encouraging people into low-paid employment, but about giving them the skills for today's economy so that they have the ability to earn more and progress in their careers. The welfare website must also provide a user-friendly interface that outlines the supports and options for education and retraining. Work always pays must be about giving people real hope and the opportunity to access education and employment and reverse these unacceptable levels of poverty in our country.
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach, to conclude.
First of all, I don't disagree with the Deputy. I think, though, that the Pathways to Work strategy that we launched in July is very heavily weighted and focused on skills, upskilling. I think the actual key to work is more on the skills side than actually on the cliff edges and anomalies side. I think we have to do everything we possibly can to provide people with the wherewithal on skills, education, to enable them to access a wide range of employment opportunities. I think the apprenticeships programme, for example, the National Action Plan on Apprenticeships is yielding results. There's incentives there for employers. We want to get to 10,000 new apprenticeship registrations per year by 2025. We are on target now in terms of achieving that. I think social protection and solace and working with ETBs and working with the further education sector is your key kind of nexus now in terms of that skills agenda and work agenda and return to education agenda. And we need to provide more flexible learning models and modules for people to access with a view to gaining employment. And I think that is the key, in my view, to enabling people to get work and work that's sustainable for them in the future and allows progression.
Thank you very much.